In Seoul's dazzling business district, Kang Min-ho, a young CEO with a reputation for being ruthless and untouchable, ruled his company with an iron will. At only 30, he had built one of the fastest-growing tech empires in Korea. Colleagues feared his sharp tongue, competitors dreaded his mind, and the media painted him as a cold, heartless machine. But there was one person who saw past the armor. His secretary, Sierra Johnson, a brilliant young woman from Liberia. Sierra was graceful, diligent, and always smiling, even when Min-ho's temper scared others into silence. Her warmth and optimism filled the gray corridors of the company with a kind of light he never admitted he needed. Yet Min-ho had a problem: her smile. Not when she smiled at him, he secretly lived for those moments, but when she smiled at other men. Whether it was a client joking during a meeting or a junior employee helping her carry files, the instant Sierra's lips curved toward someone else, Min-ho's chest burned with a rage he couldn't control. He would slam his pen down, interrupt conversations, even dismiss employees for the day just to cut their time with her short. At first, Sierra thought it was just his usual temper. But then she noticed the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way he clenched his jaw when someone complimented her, and the way his voice softened only when he said her name. One evening, after a long meeting, Sierra stayed behind to organize documents. A visiting foreign client had earlier complimented her beauty, and Min-ho hadn't spoken a word since. His silence weighed heavier than any scolding. Finally, she sighed and asked softly, "Sir, did I do something wrong?" Min-ho's hands froze over his laptop. He looked up, his usually calm mask breaking. His voice came out low, almost pained. "Why do you smile at everyone like that, Sierra? Do you not realize it drives me insane?" Her eyes widened. "Excuse me?" He stood, walking toward her with an intensity that made her heartbeat stumble. "I hate it when you smile at other men. I hate it when they look at you. Every time you laugh at their jokes, every time you let them near you." He stopped a breath away from her, his fists trembling at his sides. "You belong here, with me." Sierra's lips parted, and for once, she had no professional words to shield herself. His jealousy wasn't just possessiveness. It was love, raw and unpolished, from a man who didn't know how to express it. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady as she whispered, "You love me." Min-ho exhaled sharply, as if a dam had finally broken. His hand reached for hers, hesitant, vulnerable. "I've tried to fight it, but yes, I love you, Sierra, more than I can control." And for the first time, Sierra let her smile bloom only for him. Sierra's smile lingered, soft and trembling, but it was enough to shake Min-ho's world. He had spent years hiding behind numbers, contracts, and power plays, yet now, standing in front of her, he felt more exposed than ever. Her hand rested in his, and she whispered, "If you love me, then why do you only show it through anger?" Min-ho's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to him like that, so gently yet so honestly. He lowered his gaze, his pride warring with his need for her. "Because I don't know how else to show it," he admitted. "I've built an empire, but I've never learned how to love someone." Sierra's heart melted at the vulnerability in his voice. Slowly, she stepped closer, her warmth wrapping around the cold edges of him. "Then let me teach you," she said softly. For a long moment, silence filled the office. The only sound was the hum of the city lights outside the window. Then Min-ho lifted her hand and pressed it against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath her palm, fierce and unsteady. "This is what you do to me," he murmured. "Every smile, every word. You undo me, Sierra." Her eyes searched his face, and she saw not the untouchable CEO, but the man beneath, the one desperate to be loved. Without hesitation, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips gently against his. It was a tentative kiss at first, as if both of them were afraid the moment might shatter. But then Min-ho deepened it, his hand sliding to the small of her back, pulling her into him as if he had been starving for her all along. When they finally parted, Sierra was breathless. Min-ho's forehead rested against hers, his voice a whisper filled with awe. "Promise me, you'll save that smile for me." She chuckled softly, brushing her fingers along his jaw. "Only if you promise to stop frowning at the world so much." For the first time, Minho laughed. A real laugh, unguarded and pure. And Sierra knew then that behind his jealous anger and harsh exterior was a man who had been waiting all his life for someone to love him, and to love him back. From that night on, the office didn't feel like just a workplace anymore. It became the place where two worlds, his cold steel and her gentle light, began to blend into something neither of them had ever imagined. A love fierce enough to change them both. The days that followed felt different. Sierra noticed it first. Minho, once a storm cloud in the office, had softened, though only toward her. His gaze followed her when she walked into a room, his tone gentler when he called her name. And though his jealousy still flared whenever another man lingered too close, he was learning to control it. But rumors spread fast in the company. Whispers trailed behind Sierra as she walked the hallways. Some envied her, others doubted her intentions. "She must be using him," they muttered. A foreigner, climbing her way into the CEO's heart. Sierra pretended not to hear, but late at night, when she was alone in her small apartment, their words pricked at her heart. One evening, after a particularly long day, Minho offered to drive her home. As the city lights blurred past the car windows, Sierra sat quietly, her usual bright spirit dimmed. Minho glanced at her, frowning. "You're too quiet tonight," he said. She hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you ever wonder what people are saying about us? About me?" His grip on the steering wheel tightened. "I don't care what they say." "But I do," she whispered, turning her face to the window. "I don't want to ruin your reputation. You've worked so hard, Minho. What if people think I'm just—" Before she could finish, the car jerked to a stop at a red light. Minho turned to her, his voice low and commanding, but laced with something tender. "Listen to me, Sierra. You're not just anything. You're the woman I love. And if anyone dares to question that, they'll answer to me." Her eyes widened, her breath catching. It wasn't just anger in his voice. It was devotion. Fierce, unyielding devotion. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled through them. "You always make everything sound like a business deal," she teased, trying to lighten the mood. For the first time, Minho leaned over in the car and brushed his lips against her temple. "Then let me make it official. You're my most important investment, and the only one I'll never let go." The light turned green, but neither of them noticed right away. They sat there, the world rushing past them, caught in a moment that felt like forever. That night, when he walked her to her door, Sierra stopped him before he could leave. Gathering her courage, she leaned up and kissed him first this time. Slow, tender, but full of promise. Minho froze, then smiled into the kiss. His arms wrapped around her, holding her like a man who had finally found his home. And for the first time in years, Sierra didn't just feel like someone's secretary. She felt like someone's everything. Weeks turned into months, and their secret romance grew stronger. Sierra's laughter returned, brighter than ever, and Minho was learning, slowly, how to love without letting jealousy choke him. But the world outside wasn't so forgiving. One afternoon, Sierra was called into the HR director's office. The woman's expression was icy. On the desk lay a printed photo, Sierra and Minho caught in a blurry shot, his hand resting protectively on her back as they entered the company car together. "You know this isn't appropriate, Sierra," the director said coldly. "People are talking. Some believe you're only here because of personal reasons. Do you understand how this reflects on the company?" Sierra's heart dropped. She wanted to defend herself, to say she had earned her place. But the weight of the whispers, the photo, and the HR director's piercing stare left her silent. That evening, when Minho noticed her quietness, she finally broke down and told him. His face darkened, his jaw clenching so tightly she thought he might break. "They think you don't deserve your position?" he growled. "They dare to question you?" "Minho, please," Sierra pleaded, touching his arm. Don't make it worse. I don't want you to fight the whole company because of me. But his eyes blazed. I don't care if I burn this company to the ground. No one humiliates you. True to his word. The next day, Minho stormed into the executive boardroom. Sierra wasn't there, but later she heard from colleagues what happened. The CEO had stood tall in front of the board and said, in his calm but commanding tone, anyone who dares question Sierra Johnson's place in this company will have to question me. She is not just my secretary. She is my future. The room had fallen silent. Not one board member dared to respond. When Sierra heard, her heart trembled. That night, as they stood on the rooftop garden of the office building, his private retreat, she whispered, you didn't have to risk everything for me. Minho took her hands, his gaze unwavering. You are everything to me, Sierra. What is an empire worth if I can't protect the woman I love? Her breath caught. The city lights glimmered beneath them, but all she saw was him. The man who once hid behind coldness, now stripped bare by love. Unable to hold back, Sierra leaned into him. Their lips met, not in secrecy, not in hesitation, but in full surrender. His arms locked around her, hers around his neck, as if both had finally found their rightful place. And for the first time, Minho realized love wasn't a weakness. It was his greatest strength. Not long after Minho's bold declaration in the boardroom, the company's enemies took notice. Among them was Chairman Han, an older rival CEO who had always envied Minho's meteoric rise. Rumors of the young CEO's relationship with his secretary reached him, and he saw a weapon he could use. One evening, as Sierra left the office, a black sedan pulled up beside her. Two men in dark suits stepped out, blocking her path. Miss Johnson? One asked smoothly. Chairman Han would like to have a word with you. Before Sierra could respond, her phone buzzed. It was Minho. She answered quickly, whispering, Minho, something's wrong. His voice hardened instantly. Where are you? Within minutes, his car screeched to the curb. He stepped out, fury blazing in his eyes. Touch her and you'll regret it, he warned the men. His presence was like steel, unshakable, commanding. The men smirked but backed away, sliding into the car. One left a message behind. Tell your CEO that everyone has a weakness, and we've found his. Sierra trembled, clutching Minho's arm. He turned to her, his usual mask of control cracking. This is my fault. By loving me, I've put a target on you. Her eyes softened as she looked up at him. And by loving me, you've given me the strongest protector I could ever ask for. Don't push me away, Minho. Not now. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he could shield her from the entire world. I swear, Sierra, he whispered fiercely into her hair. No one will ever take you from me. That night, instead of going home, Minho took her to his penthouse for safety. Sierra had never been inside before. The place was vast and cold, marble floors, glass walls overlooking the city, everything immaculate and untouched. As she walked through, she realized how lonely it must have been for him, living in such luxury but with no warmth. Gently, she placed her scarf on the arm of the sofa, her presence softening the edges of his world. Minho watched her, his chest tightening. You don't belong in danger, Sierra. You deserve peace, laughter, a life far from this madness. She turned to him, stepping closer. I belong wherever you are. The words undid him. He reached for her, cupping her face tenderly before kissing her with a depth that stole her breath away. It wasn't just passion. It was desperation, a vow, a confession all at once. When they finally parted, Sierra rested her forehead against his. We'll face them together, she said. And for the first time, Minho believed it. He wasn't alone anymore. The following week, Minho doubled Sierra's security. She now had 2 discreet bodyguards shadowing her everywhere. Office, home, even on grocery runs. At first, it made her uncomfortable. But one look at Minho's restless eyes and she knew he wouldn't sleep otherwise. Yet Chairman Han wasn't finished. One morning, a scandal erupted. Headlines splashed across the business news. Young CEO's secret affair with secretary, nepotism at the top. Photos of Sierra entering and leaving Minho's penthouse were plastered everywhere. Blogs speculated she was nothing more than a gold digger. Her phone buzzed endlessly with messages from strangers. Some cruel, some mocking. At the office, whispers turned into stares. Sierra sat at her desk, trying to focus, but her hands trembled on the keyboard. When Minho stormed into her office minutes later, she stood quickly. "Sir," she began, but he silenced her with a firm shake of his head. "You are not coming back here," he said, voice low but filled with fire. "They don't deserve you." "Minho, please," she protested. "If I leave now, it'll only prove them right. I'm not here because of you. I'm here because I've worked for it." Her defiance made his chest ache. Even in the face of humiliation, she was strong. He walked closer, lowering his voice. "Do you know what it does to me to see them tear you apart? I'd give up this company if it meant keeping you safe." Her breath caught. "But I don't want you to give it up. I want you to fight, with me by your side." Something inside him shifted. For the first time, he wasn't the protector shielding her. She was standing shoulder to shoulder with him, unafraid of the storm. That night, they faced the press together. Cameras flashed wildly as they walked into the conference hall, hand in hand. Gasps filled the room, but Minho didn't falter. He stood at the podium, Sierra beside him, and said in a voice steady as steel, "Yes, Sierra Johnson is more than my secretary. She is the woman I love. And no rumor, no rival, no scandal will change that." The crowd erupted in chaos. Questions shouted, reporters scrambling. But Sierra only squeezed his hand. Later, when the hall emptied, they found themselves alone in the echoing silence. Minho looked at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've turned my empire upside down, Sierra." She leaned into him, her voice a whisper meant only for him. Maybe it needed turning. He kissed her then, slow and lingering, a kiss that didn't care about headlines or enemies, only about them. But in the shadows outside, Chairman Han watched with cold eyes. He wasn't finished. Not yet. The scandal should have ended with Minho's bold declaration. Instead, it fueled Chairman Han's rage. He had expected the young CEO to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny, but instead Minho stood taller, his reputation even more feared for his defiance. Han knew the only way to break him was through Sierra. One late evening, after an exhausting day, Sierra left the company building escorted by her bodyguards. The night air was cool, and she exhaled in relief as she walked toward the waiting car. But then, suddenly, the street lamps flickered out. Tires screeched. Another vehicle swerved in front, blocking their path. Before Sierra could react, masked men rushed forward. Her guards fought fiercely, but there were too many. A hand yanked her arm. A cloth pressed to her mouth. Darkness. When Sierra woke, she was in a dimly lit warehouse, wrists bound. Across from her sat Chairman Han, his expensive suit a cruel contrast to the cold, grim setting. "You must be the most dangerous woman in Seoul," he said smoothly. "Funny, you don't look at it." Sierra's voice trembled but stayed steady. "If you think hurting me will destroy Minho, you're wrong." Han smirked. "On the contrary, my dear, you're his greatest weakness, and soon you'll be his undoing." Meanwhile, Minho's world collapsed the moment he got the call. His guard captain reported in shame. "They took her, sir. We're tracking the vehicle." But Minho didn't wait to hear more. Rage like wildfire consumed him. He slammed his fist onto the desk, shattering glass. "Find her. Now." Hours stretched into eternity, but finally, his men traced her location. Minho didn't hesitate. He went himself, storming into the warehouse with a squad of loyal security. The moment his eyes fell on Sierra, pale, bound, but alive, something primal snapped inside him. "Touch her again, and I'll end you," Minho roared, his voice echoing like thunder. The confrontation was brutal. Han's hired men fought hard, but Minho's side was fiercer. Amid the chaos, he rushed to Sierra, cutting her bonds with trembling hands. "You're safe," he whispered, pulling her into his arms, his heart pounding against hers. "I'm here." Tears streamed down Sierra's cheeks as she clung to him. "I knew you'd come." When they finally escaped into the night, sirens wailing in the distance, Minho cupped her face, his eyes burning with devotion. "I almost lost you. I can't live without you, Sierra." And there, in the back seat of the car speeding them away from danger, he kissed her with a desperate tenderness, like a man who had been given back the very air he breathed. The night of Sierra's rescue left Minho shaken to his core. He never left her side afterward, not at the hospital, not when she insisted she was fine, not even when she begged him to rest. Back at his penthouse, Sierra sat curled on the couch, wearing one of his shirts that hung loosely on her. She watched the Seoul skyline glitter through the glass walls, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the warehouse, to the fear that she might never see him again. Minho entered quietly, carrying a tray of soup. For a man who had never lifted a pan in his life, the attempt was clumsy, but Sierra's heart swelled. "You cooked?" she teased weakly. "I tried," he admitted, setting it down with a half-smile. "Don't judge too harshly." She took a spoonful, then laughed softly. "It's terrible." His brows furrowed, then softened when he heard her laugh. "Then I'll order takeout." "No," she said, catching his hand. "It's perfect. Because it's from you." The words silenced him. He sat beside her, his usually stern face gentled. Slowly, he took her hand, his thumb tracing circles over her skin. "Sierra, I thought I was strong, that nothing could touch me. But when they took you," his voice cracked, raw, unguarded. "I was powerless." Her chest tightened. She had seen him command boardrooms, face down rivals, and walk into fire without flinching. But now his strength was stripped bare. She shifted closer, pressing her forehead against his. "You weren't powerless. You saved me, and you'll keep saving me, just like I'll keep standing by you." His arms wrapped around her then, pulling her onto his lap as if she belonged nowhere else. The kiss that followed was slow, searching, filled with the unspoken promises of two souls who had nearly been torn apart. When they finally broke apart, Sierra whispered, "You don't have to fight alone anymore, Minho." He closed his eyes, holding her tighter. "You are my strength now." Outside, the city buzzed unaware, but inside the penthouse, time seemed to stop. Their love had survived fear, scandal, and danger, but both of them knew Chairman Han wasn't finished. The war wasn't over. And yet, as Sierra fell asleep against Minho's chest, wrapped in his warmth, she realized something. No matter what storms came, their hearts had already chosen each other. The days that followed were strangely calm. Too calm. Minho's instincts told him Chairman Han was planning something big. He doubled security, restricted Sierra's movements, and kept her close at all times. But Han's attack came not with guns or kidnappings. This time it was sharper, more destructive. Early one morning, Sierra woke to find Minho standing by the window, his phone in hand, face grim. "What is it?" she asked, sitting up. He turned, jaw tight. "Han leaked forged documents. They accuse me of embezzling funds. The prosecution is opening an investigation. Stock prices are falling." Her heart clenched. "But that's impossible." "That doesn't matter," Minho cut in bitterly. "In this world, perception is power. And Han just made me look guilty." Sierra slipped off the bed and walked to him, cupping his face in her hands. "Then we fight back. Together." He searched her eyes, torn between despair and determination. "If I fall, I'll drag you down with me." "Then I'll fall with you," she whispered fiercely. "Because I'd rather stand in the fire with you than live safely without you." The weight of her words broke something inside him. He kissed her then, hard, desperate, a man anchoring himself to the only truth left in his crumbling world. The battle was brutal. Han's influence reached prosecutors, media outlets, and even some of Minho's own executives. Headlines screamed for his resignation. Shareholders threatened revolt. But Sierra refused to let him fight alone. She dug into the company's records, working late nights by his side. Her meticulous eye caught inconsistencies in Han's forged papers. Tiny details only someone who knew the company inside out could spot. "This," she said one evening, pointing at the documents, "is the mistake. Han tried too hard to mimic your signature. Look, the angle here is off. You don't curve your M like that." Minho's eyes lit up for the first time in days. "Sierra, you found it." With her discovery, Minho's legal team exposed the fraud. The tide turned overnight, Han's plot crumbled, and the chairman himself was indicted. The night the news broke, Minho and Sierra stood once again in his penthouse, overlooking the city. Relief washed over them, but more than that, gratitude. Minho turned to her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "You saved me, not just my company, Sierra. You saved me." Her smile was radiant, but before she could speak, he reached into his pocket. Her breath caught. He knelt on one knee, holding out a velvet box. Inside gleamed a ring, simple yet timeless. His voice shook as he said, "I don't know how to love perfectly. I get jealous. I get angry. But if you'll stay with me, I promise to spend my life learning to love you better. Sierra Johnson, will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision. She dropped to her knees too, cupping his face, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, Minho. 1,000 times yes." When their lips met, it wasn't the kiss of desperation or secrecy anymore. It was a vow. The empire stood. Their love stood taller. And for the first time, the young CEO who once lived in cold shadows finally understood. True power wasn't built in boardrooms. It was built in love. The wedding was private, away from the hungry eyes of the media. Just a few close allies, a quiet chapel lit by candles, and vows whispered through tears. When Minho slipped the ring onto Sierra's finger, he held her hand as if he'd never let it go again. But married life, especially with a man like Kang Minho, was never going to be simple. Sierra quickly learned what it meant to be the wife of one of Korea's youngest, most powerful CEOs. Every gala, every charity dinner, every corporate function placed her under scrutiny. Women whispered behind jeweled fans. Men tried to test her with subtle flirtations, and the cameras never stopped flashing. Minho, of course, noticed everything. At one dinner, a foreign investor leaned too close to Sierra, laughing at something she said. Minho's jaw tightened instantly, his arms snaking around her waist in a possessive grip. He leaned in, voice low but sharp. "She's my wife, not your entertainment." The room went silent for a beat, but Minho didn't care. Later, in the car, Sierra chuckled softly. "You'll cause an international scandal one day, glaring like that." He scowled. "Then let it be a scandal. I won't have any man thinking he has the right to your smile." Sierra touched his cheek, her voice gentle. "Minho, I married you. I chose you. My smile is yours." His anger melted instantly, replaced with something vulnerable. He kissed her hand, whispering, "You'll be the death of me, Sierra, and I'll die happy." Yet the biggest adjustment wasn't public. It was private. At the penthouse, Sierra slowly filled the cold, sterile space with warmth. She placed flowers on the windowsills, hung framed photos of them laughing, and cooked meals that made the air smell like home. One night, Minho walked in after a long day to find her asleep on the couch, a half-finished meal on the table, soft music playing. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching her. The once lonely walls now echoed with her presence. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. "But you have me," she murmured sleepily. And that was the truth Minho held on to. Still, shadows lingered. Chairman Han was behind bars, but enemies remained. Whispers of retaliation circled in the underworld of business. Minho knew being with Sierra made her a permanent target. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking Seoul, he wrapped his arms around her from behind, his voice rough. "Promise me you'll never leave my side, no matter what happens, even if I fall again." Sierra turned in his arms, gazing up at him. I promised that the day I said yes, you're not facing this world alone anymore. Minho, you have me, always. He kissed her then, slow and deep, the city lights blazing beneath them. Whatever storms awaited, they would face them together. For the ruthless CEO and the woman who tamed his heart, love wasn't just a sanctuary. It was their greatest weapon. Months passed, and the storms that once threatened their love slowly faded. Chairman Han was sentenced, rivals silenced, and the rumors that once filled tabloids lost their sting. What remained was Minho and Sierra, two hearts that had survived fire. On their first wedding anniversary, Minho surprised Sierra with a quiet trip back to Liberia. It was her first time home since they met, and as the plane descended, she gripped his hand tightly, her eyes shining. He leaned close, whispering, "You brought me into your world. Now let me see where the woman I love comes from." In Liberia, Minho wasn't the powerful CEO everyone feared. He was just a man, humbled by the warmth of Sierra's family and the simplicity of her roots. For once, no boardrooms, no flashing cameras. Just him and Sierra, walking barefoot along the beach, hand in hand. That night, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Sierra leaned against him and whispered, "Do you remember when you told me my smile drove you insane?" He chuckled softly, kissing her temple. "It still does. But now," she teased. He turned her face toward his eyes soft. "Now it keeps me alive." Their lips met, slow and lingering, sealing a promise that had carried them through jealousy, scandal, danger, and love. For Kong Min-ho, once a man of ice, and Sierra Johnson, the light who melted him, their story wasn't one of fairy tales. It was one of resilience. A love forged in fire, tested by the world, yet unbroken. And as they stood together on that shore, the waves crashing softly at their feet, they both knew the truth. They had found not just love, but home in each other. Episode 1 ends here. The next episode comes up soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.